gentlemen, and thank you for your presence in your midweek presence. And we are all very much looking forward to Mrs. Rekha Rao's talk on the role of Devadasis in the evolution of temple architecture. The term Devadasi refers to a historic socio-religious practice in India where young girls were dedicated as brides to deities during the Bhakti movement. This tradition, deeply intertwined with the temple rituals, played a significant role in the cultural landscape of ancient and medieval India. Furthermore, we get a peep into the intricate grooming of the Devadasis in the arts, especially dance and music in the temples. Their technical mastery in dance not only influenced the alteration of India's temple architecture, but contributed to preserving this art from heralding the cultural elements in India. Rekha Rao is an Indologist, independent researcher, and an accomplished dancer. In 2000, she embarked on independent research in Indology under the guidance of Dr. S.R. Rao, former Deputy Director General of ASI. Since 2010, she is doing research with particular focus on temple sculptures. Her interest in Apsara sculptures, Buddhist architecture, and deciphering Indus seals symbols has taken her to various temples in India and abroad. Her books are, she has an extensive body of work, having authored 16 books and numerous journal articles. Her books are available both in print and ebook formats on Amazon.com, and they are a testament to her commitment to sharing her knowledge. She has addressed talks on forums such as IGNCA, Mythic Society, Doordarshan, Center for India Studies, Indus University, Aurobindo Society, Makaut University of Technology, West Bengal, and now Destination Heritage, Bengaluru. So a warm welcome to you, Mrs. Rekha Rao ji. We are all looking forward because most of us have listened to your talk on the various formats. And since you are very active on the Facebook page, so we get to see your take on many aspects of art and architecture, which is really very interesting because you have a different perspective. Like you said, you have been trained under Dr. S.R. Rao, and that itself is proof enough that you are really, really an independent researcher with independent views that really catches people's attention. So the next 50 minutes to 1 hour is all yours, Mrs. Rekha Rao. So over to you, and we are all looking forward to your take on this very interesting topic, which today has got a different connotation to what it was in the earlier ancient times, wherein these Devadasis were accomplished artists, maybe knowing all of the 64 arts or something like that. But today it has been degenerated to something very different, and our connotation of the moment we say Devadasis today, it takes on a different connotation, and I think we will be better understand who exactly were these Devadasis, what was their grooming, and how they became an important part of temple format. And this will be dealt by her. So over to you, Mrs. Rekha Rao. We are looking forward to your take on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I thank Destination Heritage and founder trustee Dr. Geeta U. Badkillaya for inviting me to present a talk on the fascinating theme, role of Devadasis in the evolution of temple architecture. It's important to note that Devadasi system is a controversial and complex topic. Opinions on it vary widely. While some saw it as a form of religious dedication, others viewed it as a form of exploitation. In India, the Devadasi and Jyoti systems have been traditional and integral practices for centuries. In these systems, young girls were married to a deity of a temple and forbidden from marrying a mortal. However, these two systems differed in various aspects of their historical development regional practices, and social implications. The Devadasi system dates back to ancient India, where dedicating a girl to a temple played a spiritual, devotional, and cultural role. Families believed that dedicating a daughter as a Devadasi would bring spiritual merit to the family, and it was considered a prestigious, sacred, and noble act. Though the system originated in the southern and eastern parts of the country, it prevailed. It was rooted in the classical art propagation and temple traditions of offering music and dance in the daily worship sessions. Devadasis were respected as they were considered married to the presiding deity. On the other hand, Jogatis of Jogini system was mainly found in parts of Karnataka, Maharashtra, and Andhra Pradesh. It was a practice where young girl or woman or even men of lower class served in local temples as lifelong servants. They served only Mother Goddess Yellamma or Renuka as followers of the Yellamma cult. Families would often dedicate a daughter to Yellamma for Thanksgiving or fulfilling a vow known as Harake. This was especially common when the family had to escape difficulties such as curing an illness, ensuring good harvest, or bringing prosperity. The tradition had deep historical roots and was a way to maintain continuity to keep the cult of Yellamma alive through generations. Jogatis, as servants of goddess Yellamma, involved in local rituals, folk music, and dance performances in festivities. They were not connected much with classical art. The Jogati system has been more consistently associated with marginalization and social stigma. Often, Jogatis in later days were obliged to or forced to lead the life of a sex slave, catering to the sexual needs of temple patrons or village heads. Both systems have faced criticism and have been abolished for legal and social reform efforts. The Jogati system is not in the scope of my talk today. I focus only on Devadasis as represented in the Indian temples and their contribution to the Indian heritage classical art. It's interesting to know why and how Devadasis were groomed in temples. In today's talk, I focus on the temple architecture in Karnataka and Odisha to cover only some aspects of the vital role that Devadasis played in heralding the cultural elements of Bharat. I present slide 1 now, the agenda for today's talk. After this brief introduction, I proceed to who are Devadasis. Then I move to representation of Devadasis in medieval temples. Then historical reference of Devadasis in temple inscriptions. The training of Devadasis and the duties. Then I go to identification of Devadasi figure in a temple. Then significance of dance and amalgamation of Natshastra and Shastra. Then exploring the evolution of temple architecture from Angaboga to Rangaboga temples. The dancing platform in front of Garbhagriha where these dancers dance. The Devadasis after the Mughal and British invasion. Then lastly, conclusion and contribution of Devadasis. I go to slide 2 now. The second point, who are Devadasis? Devadasi, meaning the servant of the deity, was a maiden married to a deity before puberty and thus was a human bride of the celestial god and not marrying a human. While every deity in Hindu mythology is indeed associated with a consort, the offering of Devadasis as bride of God was not meant to replace or supplant the role of God's consort. Instead, it was seen as a way of honoring and offering comfort to the deity in a unique and memorable way. She was permitted to enter the Garbhagriha of the temple. The young Devadasi underwent a ceremony of dedication to the deity of the local temple, which resembled in its ritual structure a marriage ceremony. Later, she lived on the temple premises, trained to perform the religious duties of singing and dancing to please the deity. Devaditi, Matangi, Kalavantini, and Mahari, Devarediyal, Patra were the other terms for Devadasis and her assistants. Devadasis, since they were married to deities, were revered as Sumangalis, who never suffered from widowhood. Regarding their entry into the temple, the Devadasi system was not caste-bound social practice, but a religious practice and a cultural tradition associated with Hindu temples to honor a particular deity. In some cases, it was a way for families to ensure the future welfare of their daughters, as the temple provided a stable environment and access to education. In some cases, it was to avoid a threat or abuse to the lives of young girls, and dedicating them to temples was a way to protect girl children. According to temple worship rules or agamas, music and dance are integral part of worship sessions and are long-standing tradition in India. Even today in Hindu puja sessions, we go with the offering of Sangeeta Seve with the saying, Nityam Samarpayami, Geetam Samarpayami, Vadyam Samarpayami. It is believed that the Devadasi system developed when Hindu temples began to employ women to perform dance and music as part of worship session and religious duties. Over time, these women who rendered their service of dance to the deity in a temple came to be known as Devadasis, who brought blessings and prosperity to the land. They performed in front of the deity and were witnessed by royalty and masses in the pillared hall of the temple. Devadasis were supposed to be charming women and were regular invitees to functions celebrated in the royal court because their auspicious presence was a blessing. The Devadasi system in Odisha was associated with auspiciousness and good luck to ward off evil eye. They were called Radhadasis, symbolizing the highest degree of pure and selfless love towards Jagannatha, who is Lord Krishna himself. The Dasi, by her submission, exercises proximity with him, dealing directly with him. In ancient times, the Devadasis were classified into 7 categories, which defined their entry into the temple and the nature of their work. Regarding how girls were classified, first one is Datta, a girl gifted by parents to a temple to learn fine arts. Then Kruta, girls who were abducted and forced to temple service. Third is Bhrutya, donated to be permanent servants of God in temples. Then fourth is Alankara, girls skilled in decoration and aesthetics like making garlands for God, or Alankara Devadasi. Then Gopika, girls were trained to participate in group dancing and singing. Rudraganika and Vikrita, girls who were sold to temples. Such categories reveal the Devadasis' origin and status, which are mentioned in Matsya Purana and Arthashastra. Even if Devadasi could not marry a mortal man, many of them maintained sexual relationship with upper caste Hindu patterns. Some enjoyed earthly pleasures enough as Bhogasule, without scandal to themselves. The relation were their own choice. They were not prevented from childbearing, and their children were treated as Anuvallada Sule, meaning the future Devadasis. I go to slide 3 now. Now it's for the representation of Devadasis in the medieval temples. There are 2 pictures in this slide. The first picture is from Belur temple of Hoysala architecture of 11th to 13th century CE. And the second picture is from the Konark temple of Odisha of 13th century CE. In both, we can see innumerable figures of Devadasis involved in dance and music. Devadasis were crucial for temple's cultural and artistic life, contributing to the region's rich cultural heritage. In many temples of the medieval period, We can see the sculptures of Devadasis often showcasing their grace, beauty, and skill in performing a classical dance form. Their postures follow all the techniques as prescribed in Natshastra, and also the technique of playing an instrument. These sculptures, popularly called Shila, can be found in many ancient Hindu temples throughout India. To name some, like Belur Chennakeshwara Temple, the Konarak Sun Temple of Odisha, Brihadishwara Temple in Tanjavur, and the Khajuraho temples of Madhya Pradesh, and so on. In all these temples, the figures of dancers adorn the pillars as bracket figures or wall decoration, adding aesthetic beauty to the temple. In architectural representations of temples, they were depicted as young dancers, as beautiful as Apsara figures, well adorned with ornaments, charming looks, and ideal physical proportions as Nitya Sundaris. They were sometimes placed on a lotus base because they were the brides of gods and above the commoners in their beauty, knowledge, insight into fine arts, and dedication. These sculptures also serve as a reminder of the vital role that Devadasis played in ancient Indian society as custodians of the temple art and culture, because they perfected all aspects of dance and had an in-depth knowledge of the Puranic and mythological episodes which were taught to her as a young girl. They had acquired a perfect sense of rhythm and music and could sing well too. These are depicted in sculptures of many temples by dancing to the rhythm of various percussion instruments. The singing was depicted as co-singers playing on cymbals and the flutist playing on melody instrument flute. The leading dancer, a beautiful young girl, played the lead role in enacting the Puranic episodes in the temple. She was called a Patra in the medieval period. Many inscriptions of Chalukya and Hoysala temples mention the term Patra, who didn't do any other work other than dancing for the god, and their remuneration in temples was high. I go to slide 4 now for the historical reference of Devadasis in temple inscriptions. And here also there are two pictures. The first picture is the dancing Devadasi of the 12th century from Uttar Pradesh, now in a metropolitan museum. Most of the temples have this representation of a Devadasi looking into a mirror, which indicates the temple sponsored the service of dance and music by Devadasis. Second picture is the depiction of Devadasis art on the Konarak temple walls. The Vedas, our ancient scriptures, reference music and dance used in religious ceremonies and rituals. Vedas mention Apsaras and Gandharvas who were well versed in dance and music, but the term Devadasi was not mentioned in Vedic texts. The historical proof of their mention in inscriptions proves the antiquity of the Devadasi system in India. I present some details documented in inscriptions that prove that Devadasis served in temples. First reference, the earliest reference to Devadasi is found in Ramgarh Hill Cave inscription of Madhya Pradesh, which dates back to 1st century AD and describes a Devadasi, a dancing girl by name Suttanuka. Then secondly, the practice of Devadasi existed mainly in Shiva Temple of Odisha during the Somavamshi and Ganga periods between 9th and 12th century CE. The Brahmeshwara Shiva Temple inscription of Somavamshi king Udyotakeshari mentions that he erected a Shiva temple and his mother Kolavati dedicated hundreds of beautiful dancing girls as Devadasis to serve in the temple who were adorned with ornaments set in gems. The third point is the Shobhaneshwara Mahadeva temple, Niyali inscription of 12th century CE in Cuttack district records that King Vaidyanatha offered to Shiva beautiful and fully adorned damsels like fairies of the heaven. Then the Banja Nagara plate of 9th century CE suggests that The institution of Devadasis was prevalent in Odisha during the time of Bhanjas. 700 Darika or dancer families were attached to the temple during that period. During the Ganga period, particularly under the support of Anantavarma Chodaganga Deva, the system of Devadasi extended to Vaishnava temples. The Corny copper plate grant of Chodaganga mentions that the Devadasis in the Sri Kurmam temple offered services of singing music, playing instruments, blowing conch, and making garlands to Narsimha. An entire village, Chudanga Sahib, was founded exclusively for the Devadasis of Puri Jagannatha temple. They were to perform all the routine duties in the temple in addition to singing and dancing. They were looked upon with respect. Some Devadasis were able to make grants for the maintenance of the temple also. Innumerable sculptural representation of female dancers playing flute or drums are found on the Sun Temple Konar, Linkaraja Temple, Rajarani Temple, Mukteshwara and Brahmeshwara temples of Bhubaneswar. Chinese traveler Huan San describes that Somanatha temple of Gujarat in 7th century had over 500 dancers, and the Sun temple had several singers in service of temple. King Rajaraja Chola had brought 400 dancers from all parts of the country to serve in the Tanjore Brihadishwara temple. In Karnataka, one of the Pattakkal inscription of 8th century mentions a temple dancer by name Badi Poddi, daughter of Govinda Poddi, was a Devaditi. The Hoysala queen Chantala was a Patra, the lead role dancer before marrying King Vishnuvardhana. The Belur temple inscription says about Chantala Devi as Vichitra Nartana Pravartana, Patra Shikhamaniyam, Sangeeta Sangata Saraswatiyam. It means Shantala, the best dancer, Patra, was well versed in dance and music and compared to goddess Saraswati in her knowledge. During the Chalukya and Hoysala era, the lead temple dancer was called a Patra. I go to slide 5 now to explore the training of Devadasis and their duties. It's interesting to understand how Devadasis got trained in a temple and what their duties were. The young girl before puberty was married to the Lord in a ritual that had all the characteristics of a marriage. Immediately after the ceremonies, the girl's training starts with dance lessons that continues for 6 or 7 years or even longer. Lessons in devotional songs and the Puranas were imparted by her adoptive mother and her well-versed spiritual guru in the presence of Lord. This was to connect the girl with the Lord. Except for seva at the temple, her dress was sober and devoid of worldly interests or luxuries. Later, she was well trained in dance and studied the intricacies of rhythm and abhinaya. Abhinaya is the expressive part of sentiments, rasa, navarasa. They also were trained in music and playing many instruments. They were educated in Sanskrit and all Puranic episodes. Since they stayed, got educated and trained in temples, their art recitals were the key attraction in temple activities. Now the question arises, why Devadasis were trained only in dance and music and not other sports? The answer is that the art of dance was the most appreciated form of cultural activity because it was an audiovisual art form. From a philosophical view, dance is an expression of joy. It is the sway and harmony of the mind and body in response to the nature of melodious, rhythmic, or musical vibrations. It sets the performer and the onlooker into a movement of spirituality. Hence, the sacred art of dance and music became part of temple worship sessions. For this reason of promoting spirituality through cultural activities, Devadasis were trained only as dancers and not in any other form of art like Dhanurvidya or Ayurveda. Dance was popular simply because it creates beauty, grace, and enthusiasm. It vibrates festivities, marriage, and childbirth, and attracts attention. Almost everyone naturally loves dance. It is eulogized as auspicious and a source of amusement, adding grace and attraction and enthusiasm to any occasion. Only a Devadasi, who stayed faithful to her Lord until the end, had the privilege of having her body covered with the same sari she received during her marriage with the Lord. After death, the embers for the cremation were brought from the temple for her pyre. The Devadasi enjoyed the highest status in the temple and had the privilege of receiving the prasada first. Devadasi was called Mahari, meaning Mahanari, in the temples of Odisha. Among the 36 sevas, dance was offered to the Lord in the rituals performed by Maharis. Devadasis was the only category where women were allowed to serve Lord Jagannatha. Many historians assert that this is the only Vishnu temple in the country where women could perform specific rituals other than dancing and singing. Along with music, the Mahari dance form was introduced in the temple before Lord Jagannatha retired to bed at night, where the Devadasi danced for the deity's satisfaction. It was called Devabhoga. The prestigious position of the main Devadasi in temples was not hierarchical. Only talented young and beautiful girls were chosen locally or outside and trained in dance. Patra Devadasi didn't need to be in service permanently. Servants of deity were sometimes male members also, dedicated to serving the temple. Many were also trained in playing instruments. The male co-artists, who were also servants of God, belonged to Devadasi community and provided instrumental support to Devadasi's dance. They were Madalekara, who played on percussion instruments, Vamshiga, who played on flute, Gayaka, a male singer, Sulevala, the guru, who taught dance and conducted the rhythm for instrumentalists, had to have a thorough knowledge of Natshastra. Not only girls, many male members also were into the art of dance, as can be seen in the temple sculptures. Nati was the co-dancer, and Savagani, who played cymbals, was a female singer. All these instrumentalists are always present as dwarf figures in the panels of Patra Devadasi in dance. Now, coming to the interesting topic of remuneration for dancers and singers. Mattaru was the currency of gold coins in Chalukya period, which weighed on an average 4 grams of gold. Silver coins were called Gadyana or Dramma. The weight and value of Dramma could differ based on the standards set by ruling authority. Temple inscriptions refer that the main dancer Patra was paid 12 Mattaru as remuneration. The singers and co-dancers were paid 8 Mattarus as remuneration. The Madalekaras were offered 8 Mattaru. The Kambada Sule, the lady who stood with a chowri or a fan, was paid 6 Mattaru. And the other temple attendants in cleaning service were paid either Mattaru or silver coins Dhamma according to their status. I proceed to slide 6 now. Slide 6, it is for the identification of Devadasi figures in a temple. Many female figures in temples such as Devadasis, Shalabanjikas, Dohada figures or Divyanganas look alike. They are well adorned and look beautiful. How are Devadasis in sculptures different from Chalabanjikas or Tantri figures or even Divyanganas, which look very similar in dress code? All these figures were integral part of temple architecture looking like the celestial apsaras. Though apsaras and Devadasis are two distinct concepts that appear in all temples of India, Apsaras and Devadasis are different and should not be confused with each other. Apsaras are mythological concepts, celestial in nature, and are associated with dance, pleasure, and temptation. Apsaras are consorts of Gandharvas, the celestial musicians. They are seen as flying figures with Gandharva as Gandharva couple, signifying their abode of the upper world. Well, Devadasi is a human representation with assistants and dedicated to serving the deity in a particular temple. They herald the culture of arts and are considered respected members of the society. In temples, Devadasis are depicted in Sringara Bhava as decorating themselves before performing in front of the deity or in a recital with co-artists, co-singers and instrumentalists. They are also shown as playing string instruments like veena, singing with cymbals, and playing various percussion instruments. That proves their insight into knowledge. Many Devadasis also depict the duties of a temple attendant. Some temples had over 400 to 700 Devadasis in the temples of medieval period associated with the temple complex. The number of Devadasis was directly proportional to the temple's wealth and status. Temples with more Devadasis were often wealthier and more prestigious. The competition among temples for political power and prestige led to an increase in the number of Devadasis, sponsoring elaborate festivals and hierarchy of medieval dynasties in India. Of course, not all Devadasis were prime dancers. Many were in the temple's duties of fanning, cleaning, and flower decoration. Temple authorities sponsored their salaries according to their status, and donations were offered in ritual sessions. The Devadasis who engaged in jobs other than fine arts were called Sule. Sule doesn't correspond to a prostitute. It meant in medieval period a temple attendant. They were temple assistants in ancient times. The terms of Devadasi mentioned in inscriptions are like Kamba Sule, an attendant who stood by the pillar, Chamara Sule, a lady holding a chamara or fan, and Alankara Sule, a garland maker, Bhogada Sule, and so on. Now, please observe picture 1. The first picture, she is a Devadasi attendant, a temple attendant, Kamba Sule. It means a Devadasi who stands by the side of a pillar in a temple and holds a chamara. She is also a chamara Sule who fanned the deity. The Sule in front of Garbhagriha was well paid and she had to be beautiful. Though she wears a minimum jewelry, it is bigger. Now observe picture 2, the second picture. This figure holds a flower garland. She is the Alankara Sule who was a maker of garlands and flower decorations for the deities. Alankara Sule was another type of Devadasi. Now observe the third picture. Lady with Bal. Many well-adorned beauties in temples also depict themes related to tantric perspectives. This figure indicates the location of Kundalini chakras holding chakra balls in specific location of the physical body. It is related to a tantric theme, so she is not a Devadasi but a Divyangana. Now observe the fourth picture, the last picture. The woman is well adorned and in a graceful posture, but she is holding a tree branch. Shalabandika figures holding a flowering or fruiting tree branch are also not with musical instruments. So she is not a Devadasi, but a Divyangana figure depicting another branch of heritage knowledge. Studying the accessories and assistants can help judge whether a figure is a Devadasi or a Divyangana. I go to slide 7 now. It's the amalgamation of Shilpa Shastra and Natshastra. There are 3 pictures. The first picture is the bracket figure sculpture of a patra in performance inside the Belur temple. Here, the instrumentalists are depicted in a dwarf form at the base to highlight the importance of the main figure, Patra Devadasi. The other two pictures show Raja Nartakis performing dance in a procession along with instrumentalists who are depicted in equal size. Devadasis were divided into two categories. They were Patra and Raja Nartakis. The first type, Patra, danced inside the temple on the Navaranga Hall dancing platform. She was considered superior and was privileged to be with the Lord in his private apartment every night before the deity went to sleep. The other type was Raja Nartaki, who accompanied the deity in temple processions, sang devotional songs, and danced on the road. When the idol of God was taken in a grand procession during festivals. This was both devotional and entertainment for the public. Because their performance was more public, they were considered slightly lower in status compared to Patras. But Raja Nartakis helped bring religious festivities out of temple and into the public sphere, making art accessible to all members of the society. The travelers and devotees who visited temples to participate in temple festivities contributed large amounts in appreciation, which increased the temple's wealth. The two great ancient treatises the temple architects followed were Natshastra and Shilpa. Natshastra was a compilation on the art of dance, dramatics, and music. Shilpa was on the rules of architecture, an umbrella term for numerous texts on temple art and architecture. They were the manuals and knowledge source for creating the uniqueness of Indian temple architecture. Commentaries on Natshastra were so elaborate that many kings who sponsored temple building activity knew the intricacies involved in dance and music. The Vishwakarma, or the Stapati, the foremost craftsman, and the Shilpins, the sculptors who excelled in carving, were also well versed in the intricacies of Natshastra and Shilpa. The elaborate jewelry and hairstyles involved in all sculptures that added grandeur of aesthetic value to temple architecture were according to the descriptions prescribed in Natshastra. Temples were a conglomerate of art, science with engineering techniques, geology, human anatomy, etc. Sculptors knew about pure dance movements and the interpretative dance as Navarasa and used accessories accordingly. Natshastra was amalgamated with Shilpa and was used as a sutra, a base or foundation on which sculptures of cultural, social, mythological, and philosophical aspects manifested. Stone was used as a permanent medium to express the thought process, be it in the field of fine arts or in the field of philosophy. The graceful dance postures performed by Devadasis inspired the sculptors who successfully carved the best dance sculptures in the temples of India. The sculptors tried to capture and freeze the very delightful and best postures of the heritage art by Devadasis and the instruments they played in temples. Devadasis were probably like models in support of this work, while sculptors sketched the posture of dance initially on stone. Through the combined effort of these two, we now see the style of classical art and various types of instruments that were invoked during the medieval period. Now, coming to the point of adoption of dance and music in temple sculptures. A fact that intrigues tourists and devotees while studying medieval temple is why the temples were studded with so many young women and also many deities in dancing posture. Dance was an activity that enhanced enthusiasm for social events. The dancer's oneness with music and rhythm becomes a joy sought, and the joy experienced by the artist becomes contagious, making the viewers also experience the happy moments. The inclusion of dancers in temple architecture increased the scope for sculptors. The curves of the fully adorned physical body were the primary form, and the sculptors loved to depict a dancing sculpture. The art of dance and music thus became integral to temple architecture, and the king tried to educate his subjects equally well in the cultural aspects also. It is because Natshastra and Shilpa were studied together. The depiction of deities were also in intricate dance postures that showcases the artistic excellence of sculptors and the importance of dance in the cultural life of community. It adds a dynamic and vibrant aspect to the otherwise static nature of stone sculpture. It served as means to educate the devotees and the public about the stories, the attributes, and the form of deities. Dance postures of deities are often linked to specific mythological stories or aspects of God. It blends spirituality, art, and culture, reflecting the profound connection between the divine and the human experience of joy. I go to slide 8 now. Now, trying to explore the evolution in temple architecture from Angabhoga to Rangabhoga temples. There are two pictures. Observe the top picture. This earliest temple, an Angabhoga temple in Sanchi, Madhya Pradesh. It involved a small garbhagriha and a small assembly hall in front and was without decorative sculptures. The bottom picture is a big Rangabhoga temple of the Chalukya period, an evolved temple with many halls, a dancing platform, and extended walls adorned with figures of dancers and deities. As per Hindu beliefs and inscriptional evidence, God is light and he is to be revered with different types of rituals and offerings. The earliest temples of India were Angabhoga type, which were not very large and ornate. Later, Angabhoga temples evolved into Rangabhoga type. Angabhoga was a service rendered the being deity embodied in an image or icon, which included bathing, change of cloth, change of sacred thread, application of sandal paste, lighting oil lamps, and offering food as a token of respect. They were performed like daily rituals of worship according to Agama text. The Rangabhoga, which included, in addition to daily worship rituals, the offering of Gita and Vadhya through music, dance, and recitation of Puranic episodes, was meant to please God. The music and dance as part of worship were open to public in temples. The devotees who promoted Rangabhoga temples belonged to the promoters of fine arts, and this achieved great heights when Rangabhoga services were introduced in temples. After that, dance and music became an integral part of daily worship, with dancers meeting their expectations by drawing huge crowd. A good-looking young dancer with all her attributes and talents has always been sought after by audience who are attracted to temples to listen to music even before they enter them. I go to slide 9 now. Slide 9 is another richly carved 9th century Shiva Temple in Bhubaneswar, Odisha. It is the largest Rangabhoga temple built by mother of Somavamshi king. The inscription there states that Queen Kolavati presented many beautiful women fully adorned as Devadasis to this temple who danced in worship sessions. I move on to slide 10 now. Now, where did this Patra Devadasis perform inside a temple? Temples that offered Rangabhoga service had to be large enough with a big circular dancing platform in the Navaranga pillared hall in front of Garbhagriha. It was created for the Devadasis to give their recitals. The pillared hall was large enough to accommodate audience. The temple premises also had to have an attached Sulegeri where the innumerable dancers and other artists who offered service to God could reside. It involved huge money as these artists could not do different jobs for their livelihood. Chalukyan rulers believed that dance rendered by young and beautiful girls attracted large number of devotees, which probably helped maintain harmony in cultural and religious heritage. Chalukya king Vikramaditya VI built the Mahadeva temple at a place called Ittagi in Karnataka and donated a modest place and money to take care of all the Devadasi dancers and servants who were employed in the temple. This is mentioned in Epigraphia Indica, volume 30. In the temples of Odisha, a separate structure known as Natamandir, a dance hall, was stylized and added to the main temple. The huge audience assembly hall called Jagamohan was created for the audience to watch the Devadasi performance of music and dance. Later, the same reverence of pleasing the mind of God was extended to the king as he represented God on earth as Naradevata. Dancers performed Puranic themes for him, a way for the king to understand Puranic episodes. Both the king and the common public were educated in our religious history by the learning of Devadasis. I go to slide 11 now. The Devadasis after the Mughal and British invasion. This slide shows three phases of Devadasis. Observe the top picture. It depicts Devadasis, the female dancers, were expected to perform dance in temple every day during various religious rituals and festivities. They danced along with the orchestral music of percussionists, flute players, and cymbals, and so on, as part of their service. The second is the old picture of a later period, that is after the Mughal and British invasion of Devadasis in dance and music. After the Mughal invasion, Devadasis lost their support from temples and were supported by royal families. The Devadasi system, particularly in later period, suffered the sexual exploitation of women and children under the guise of religious duty. Their social status declined as they danced for the king or wealthy merchants and were forced into prostitution. Over time, they were sheltered as palace artists at royal courts. Their music compositions also changed from classical devotional themes to eulogizing the kings. The well-accomplished Devadasis, the guardians of classical music and dance styles, were turned into courtesans and not associated with temple service. The institution of Devadasis, including Patra and Rajanartakis, were misused for the personal benefit of temple priests and other influential individuals, and Devadasis suffered mistreatment. Poverty and social pressures made them natural recruits for commercial sex trade. Over time, in the mid-20th century, the Devadasi system and practice was eventually outlawed in India, and their role in society changed significantly. Now, observe the third picture. It is of three dancers of the post-independence period. Appreciating their learning and perseverance, the artists were recognized with an altered status and were recognized as Asthana Vidushis. Many great legendary artists like M.S. Subbulakshmi, Srimati Rukmini Devi Arundel, Bala Saraswati, Kishori Amankar, who belonged to Devadasi families, put a lot of effort in evolving the declining phase of classical dance and music into stage art. They established prestigious institutions where, to this day, many artists are getting trained. The 20th century saw classical dance and music performed outside the temple premises and evolved into stage recitals. I proceed to slide 12 now, the last slide for conclusion and contribution of Devadasis. The Devadasi contributions to preserving the traditional classical art of dance, traditional embellishments, dress code, and social life are significant. The cultural heritage of India can be appreciated by the contributions of Devadasis, summarized into the following points. Point number one, were the girls not trained in dance and served in temples as artists? The various types of instruments which are obsolete now would not have come to our understanding. Temples were centers of cultural art. Devadasis and Rajanartakis played a crucial role in propagating Indian classical dance. The donations by the queens and other dignitaries to the maintenance of artists are detailed in many temple inscriptions. Then, thirdly, the glorious contribution of Devadasis was that they pursued the heritage of art of dance and music and served in temples without getting involved into family life. Recognizing their dedicated service, their figures were depicted on temple walls in a permanent stone medium. Devadasis occupied a unique position and played a significant role in shaping both the economic and social structures of medieval temples of India. Their glorious contribution was one of the major reasons for changes in Indian temple architecture. The temple plan itself underwent a change, extending with a dancing platform and a large pillar hall for art recitals. The star-shaped outer walls of big temples were extensively decorated with very elegant dance sculptures, giving the Indian temples a very unique identity. Since Devadasis were skilled artists, the sculptors could carve figures playing instruments in Devadasis' hands. The inclusion of Devadasi figures enhanced the scope for artists and sculptors. People could understand and appreciate the classical art of our land with an enhanced patriotic spirit. These temple figures have been like a documentary on various types of instruments that were in use in medieval period. Literary explanations are there, but the sculptures give a better visual impact and understanding of instruments. Because of Devadasis, temples became centers to propagate classical art. They enacted religious episodes that educated commoners in understanding the mythologies. The flow of devotees increased as they could enjoy art forms. The appreciation money, which was income for temples, also increased and was devoted to various social reforms. Though the Devadasi system was abolished in 20th century, its contributions to heralding and stabilizing the heritage cultural arts of India remains as permanent records in our temples. Devadasi's contribution to preserving and transmitting the cultural fabric of India remains an integral part of country's artistic and archaeological heritage. With this note, I end my talk. Thanks everybody for giving me your time. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Rekha Rao. We got an interesting insight as she explored into the little known world of Devadasis, their training, their duties, their representation in medieval times, the historical references from temple epigraphy. Furthermore, glimpses of the significance of dance and the amalgamation of Natshastra and Shilpa Shastra was a new dimension of our understanding. Devadasis is indeed a controversial and a complex subject. And though they were considered as Sumangalis, they played a vital role in the earlier times and thereby considered as auspicious. They were the Nritya Sundaris and custodians of temple art. And also the architecture, in the evolution of the temple architecture, they were responsible in terms of building the Ranga Mantapa and also the outer walls. That was a very interesting discovery that I myself could glean from her talk. These Devadasis were sought after women for their grace and vitality, and the institution of Devadasis, as gleaned from temple inscriptions, tell us that they were looked upon with respect and that a whole village was given to them by the Puri temple is indeed an eye-opener. Their deterioration in the status from dancing in temples and then being supported by royalty led to their denigration as women. But however, the famous artists like Subbalakshmi, Amonkar, etc., they gave trajectory to the traditional dance form. So thank you so much, Rekha ji, for this wonderful talk. And coming to the present times, 4 decades after the Devadasi system was banned in Karnataka, young girls and women are still dedicated to God in Vijayanagara district, which even today, as per the latest 4 5 years back census, has the highest number of Devadasis, numbering 21 between the ages of 18 and 36. So thank you once again, Mrs. Rekha Rao, and it is really indeed an eye opener, the way that the status that they held and how they came down as time passed by. And today this Devadasi term itself has got a different connotation, not as custodians of temple art and the various other functions that they did in ancillary capacities. So I would like to set the ball rolling by asking one question. Ravi Varma's muse there was Kalavant from Goa. She is Rajibai Mool Gavankar. And through her, we have the today's pictures of Saraswati and Lakshmi, which is ubiquitous, and it is prayed in every home, because till then we did not know how Lakshmi or Saraswati looked upon. So when such an exalted status was given in the say late 19th century and 20th century, what could be this reason? Do you think people, if they came to know that the goddess that they are worshipping was was a Devadasi, do you think that this status of worshipping the goddesses Lakshmi and Saraswati would have been in every home?
Yeah, even we had the figures of Ravi Verma painting in the puja room, and my great grandmother had decorated it with the pearls and real gold jewelry. So the
Can you
point,
share that later when you get a chance, ma'am?
what my father
I
taught
would,
me was Lakshmi. There is a slight difference in the way they are seated. With knowledge, she's firmly seated on a stone. And Lakshmi is on a slender stalk of lotus. And even she doesn't fall or anything, but she's always on a slender lotus stalk. And even elephants come and garland her. The difference is, the knowledge is firm and money is temporary, free flowing. It gets that's what we used to understand. But Ravi Verma has given the other women also, like Kalavantinis, the artists with instruments, and he gives the same face to goddess also. But the explanation of 4 hands indicates it's a goddess and not a mortal.
No, what I wanted also to further know is if people had, if people came to know that the goddess that they are worshipping is a Kalavant, a Devadasi, would those pictures be accepted for regular worship and become popularized?
But how do you say Lakshmi and Saraswati were Devadasis? The face might be similar.
No. The Kalavant who posed, the muse for these pictures, she is Rajibai Molgavankar, a Govan Kalavant, also called as Devadasi. It was she who posed. It was she who posed for Ravi Varma as Lakshmi.
As
and
Lakshmi.
he took this, yes, and he took the same the face also for Saraswati. Ganesh, are you there?
See, for example, we can see many temples of goddesses in temples. The figures are also some model would have given, like the posture of Durga or Mahishasuramardini, the leg lifted up, and a particular heroic posture and her heroic expression. They're all given by a model, and it is sketched by the sculptor on the stone. And it could be they were models, but a sculptor cannot, it is an expression of an artist, Ravi Verma. He also needs a model to do the figure, whether it is goddess or depicting a dancer or a demon or anything. They need a model to sketch. So these were followed, the positions and accessories were followed by the Devadasis aharya. Aharya means external decoration when they perform. Those were captured in the sculptor's mind and they gave it in stone. So Devadasis were certainly influenced the sculptor's mind and thoughts also.
Thank you,
If I
Shreyas. Can
may-
you please read out
Can I
the
interrupt?
questions? Just a minute. We
Yeah.
will just
No,
a
no,
minute.
in
Alkesh.
connection to this question, my answer would be,
Okay.
I would say that knowing whoever who is a model is a different thing. It's what your soul is and how you predict would be the important thing. You can go ahead, ma'am.
Okay.
Sir, I would agree with you. In fact, it wasn't known that a Kalavant, Rajibai Mulgaonkar had actually posed for Ravi Verma until my book came out in 2024 March, where for the first time it was actually known that Ravi Verma had used a photograph of Rajibai Mulgaonkar, who was a Devadasi who was a Kalavant from Goa. But Kalavants had been posing for the artist. I was able to trace it to as far back as maybe the early 1880s even, when a girl called Gauri, who was a dancer from Tanjavur, who had gone to Baroda as a dancer. So Ravi Verma was using dancers as models for his pictures. But I agree with Rekha ma'am, because it doesn't matter who poses for you, it is what you make of it as an artist.
What you make, that's true. And we worship a goddess of knowledge, goddess of wealth, not the not the model actually who posed, who
The
did.
current
Nothing
example
matters
is,
to us. We only
Rekha
worship
ma'am,
Saraswati and Lakshmi.
Rekha ma'am, current example was serial Ramayana when it started. I was like young that time, in my 18, like 12 or 15 years. And Deepika Chikhalia was coming to Gujarat, and with various people were like almost bowing her down. Now she is an actress, but they were seeing Sita in her. So same could be the principle. The human mind always carries the same genetics. They don't change. So we can't
Of course,
like contradict on this stuff that okay, they were Devdasis and they cannot be. They were the Devdasi also. What I saw is they were serving the gods, but somehow at certain level the people made or people have written something else, and then the whole situation was going to be banned and something. Maybe British needed more people, so they tried to stop this type of prathas and then take these people for something else. I believe that.
yeah, artists were influenced by Devadasis performances. That was captured in their mind. That's how they could bring out the exact posture. Unless a model is there, they cannot make that exact, like for example, the Padasthana, Alidasthana, Pratyalidasthana, somebody has to pose for them to give the exact measurement of limbs. And models, dancers were like probably models, even in all the temples.
Shreyas, can you please read out the questions from the YouTube and the other Zoom link? Then we will open it for the other audience to interact.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, ma'am. That was a very interesting talk. And it was so comprehensive that, some of the questions I had in my mind to ask in this session, you already answered those things. So thank you for that. So we have some many complimentary messages. Dr. Harihara Srinivas Rao says that the details with respect to Devdasis in magnificent style pictures are nicely explained by Rekha ma'am. Thanks a lot. And he also has one question. Please give any names of singers, either male or female, from inscriptions of Chalukya, Hoysala, or the Vijayanagara period.
Yeah, these are detailed names of singers. One I mentioned, Badi Poddi, was the name of a dancer. which is inscribed in, in the inscription of Aihole Temple. Shantala was another Patra dancer. So we have to refer to in detail to I referred H.S. Gopal Rao's book to go through the inscriptional details. That's where I could find the how many gold coins were given to each dancer. Each inscription describes, but not many. Only one Sutanuka is mentioned in the 1st century AD. So we have to explore that complete inscriptional details to find out the names.
Yes, definitely. Mr. Digvijay Ram says, amazing Rekha ma'am. So much of knowledge and hats off. Professor Usha Rani Tiwari from BHU. She compliments a wonderful lecture and well explained. Mr. Ganesh Shivaswamy has a question. Can you please tell us more on how Devadasis were treated during the Mughal period?
Stephen?
Can you please tell us more on how the Devadasis were treated during the Mughal period?
During Mughal period, in the Mughal period, they did not interfere too much with temple rituals or anything, but they were certainly misused in a Mughal period because temples lost their support. The Hindu kings were losing to many of the Mughal invasion. So the sponsors were not there to support the large number of families of Devadasis. They were all drawn. And these Mughals brought some women like Kathakaras, and they introduced Kathak style in their courts and temples. Probably they drew the women from our temples and made them learn Kathak style of dancing for their entertainment. Could be that Kathikas or Kathakaras, they were dancing the traditional Kathak style of dance. They were also taught, probably many Devadasis had to change over because of survival problem.
Yes, yes. I think
Otherwise, they don't do,
Yes, one second.
Devadasis do not do any other work other than serving in temples. They have to oblige to the ruling party.
correct. Yes.
Serious, one second.
Sure.
That question which we were talking about, that Devadasis, how they lose their degeneration. This question would be this answer would be also part in the continuation, that during Mughal time, the Devadasis were misused, and then Britishers may have added something, and that the pratha was banned, or the system was banned by Britishers to get the people. So that could be a connectivity issue. Thank you, Sirius. Go ahead.
When Britishers came, rather many artists were taken over by the palace people. Like even my dance teacher, Venkat Lakshma, was a court artist. Venkat Lakshma was a Devadasi. She taught us she was my first teacher for Bharatanatyam. She was a Devadasi, and they were taken care of by kings. As Asthana, we did same thing with all other singers and other artists too. The rulers took care of this after their abolishment, and many artists were taken care of by kings. Even our Wadayars had a lot of artists in their palace.
Yes.
Though they did not perform in temples, that was banned, but their art was respected.
Yes. Ms. Ramya Srinidhi, she says, an excellent session. I was mesmerized. Your talk was extremely visual and vibrant, and thank you. Mrs. Sushila B also says, an excellent talk. It was very interesting and informative and gave a deep insight of Devadasis, and she thanks you as well. Mr. Shashi BS says, excellent presentation by Rekha ji, crisp and analytical. And he has a question. Can you throw some explanation on the distinction between Shilpas of Devadasis, Shalabanjikas, or Devata?
Yeah. Devadasis are only into dance and music. They are always with instrumentalists. The first question when I met Dr. Rekha Rao was, he asked me, how do you say the Shalabanjika figures look alike? And the dancer also look alike in dress. But the dancers should have instrumentalists. Dance will not go without instruments, without vadya, without Sangeeta. So Devadasi figure can be identified only with the instruments that go along with her, and she's always mostly in a dancing posture. Whereas Shalabanjikas are not always into dance posture. They don't show instrumentalists. They just hold the branch of a tree. That is fertility. Shalabanjika is seen as a fertility team promoters. How to grow plants, how to nurture the society with the fruits. So that is a very different theme. And queens also, in the Dohada figures, they push the branch of the tree with their left leg. That means it's a ritual, associated with palace people. So that means the tree would bloom and give plenty of fruits with the association of a young woman to the plant. So this way we can understand. And tantric figures also do not have much of an instrumentalist. Some yoginis do show percussion instruments, but the percussion instrument only the percussion instrument leads the yogini to a trance. So the themes are different. They're not temple dancers or involved in Natshastra positions as prescribed in Natshastra, even though the dress code is same, because Natshastra describes many varieties of Devadasis, what should be their costume, what should a Gandharva Kanya wear, what should a Devadasi wear, what should a yogini wear. It is all prescribed. So these things were followed by artists. Dress code remains almost the same, but the accessories help, whether they have instrumentalists or no, whether they have philosophical topics or whether they are with plants. So that's how we identify Devadasi from Shalabanjika. Or Yakshi figure. Yakshi figures are mostly nude. Yakshi figures are very different. They are not dancers, even though they may stand sometimes in dancing posture. But they are not dancers, they are not Devadasis. Yakshis are monument protectors, protector deities. But they are also well adorned like Devadasis.
Yes.
Most of the temples have that figure with holding a mirror. And that is the key point. The temple has Devadasis.
Right.
Sponsored Devadasis.
Right. Yes, that was very interesting. I mean, we are familiar with the Darpana Sundari of Belur.
Darpana Sundari, yeah.
But what is the meaning for something I did not know until today? So thank
For
you.
Darpana Sundari?
I mean, as you just said, that the presence of that sculpture.
Yeah, Darpana Sundaris were Darpanas, mirrors were not a very common tool or object in every family because it was only polished metal that was used. It was very difficult to make a mirror, polish the metal to that high level of polish. So Devadasis were privileged to use Darpana. They had their own personal law. This thing. Otherwise, the normal decoration was through looking into water or oil containers. But Devadasis had Darpana, and they also paid a tax called Kannadivana. So Devadasis service is always recognized by a mirror.
Right.
I mean, one figure they give to say that the temple had the service of Devadasis. It may be many other things later on, but mirror played a role in Devadasi's life.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have Mr. VVS Murthy, who says it was interesting to know why and how Devadasis were groomed in temples and their vital role influencing India's temple architecture. And he commends you on explaining how the evolution of temple architecture, there was a crucial role of the Devadasis. Mr. Arinjay Aris has a personal comment. He says, having visited Saudatti and Itgi, now I can see the temple architecture in a different light. Thanks. He enjoyed the talk. We have one more complimentary message from Mrs. Ratna Kumari, who says, Rekha ma'am, thank you so much. It was a wonderful session. Got so much information. And there is one last question from Shashi BS, who asks, what is the link between the caste system and Devadasis?
Actually, in Devadasi system, it was a social practice, not caste bound, because for a Devadasi, they are servants of God. Anybody could get into temple. The girls who are mistreated, abducted, nobody went by their caste to adopt them in temples. So it was like to save a girl child. The temples promoted that act. It was a wonderful initiation to introduce dance and music so that girls who were neglected, or if there are many children, girl child was the neglected part. They were all given to temples, and temple educated them. That's how we have many figures in Chalukyan art. A lady writing a letter. Many scholars have said Devadasis were illiterate, but it's not so. Devadasis were literate. They were taught Sanskrit and they knew mythologies and all the Puranic stories and all the songs. So a letter writing sequence indicates that Devadasis were literate.
Yes.
Is that the question? Is that the answer?
I think it does answer to a great extent. But I think one thing is which we have seen after, let's say, the Mughals and the British, perhaps because of their social exclusion, Devadasis and male members of their family, I think they did form a sort of caste or community, if I'm not wrong.
I think something disappeared from my computer.
Sorry.
Can you please repeat?
Yes.
I didn't see. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
So I think, I think in the last few centuries, let's say 300 to 400 years, especially in South India, I think they did form a somewhat like a caste. Maybe caste is not the right term, because you had family members of Devadasis who would play instruments, who would accompany them, and it was a community, so more or less.
It was a community.
We identified differently from others. So
yeah. Talented children were encouraged to become dancers. Right. Others were made into do the other work of temple. There is not all could enjoy dance or music or learn it. It was only a few girls could learn it to absorb the intricacies of dance and the physical strain that is involved while learning dance or music. But they were given other work also. So caste did not play a much role, but girls from higher caste, like Brahmin, suppose a Brahmin class girl was devoted to temple. By samskara, they knew how to worship, what the worship sessions inside the Garbhagriha. So the Devadasis of Odisha temple were allowed to do worship sessions.
Yes.
So Devadasis were given that privilege. So probably the children from upper class had we know what is a worship session in our puja, like Ganesha Vratar, Gauri festival. We know how to proceed with the mantras. My maid servant may not know that.
Right.
So those people were given another work, and people who were already into this samskara of worship sessions were introduced to enter the Garbhagriha, and those girls had the natural inclination for dance and music. Yes. It comes from the family background. Not only it is acquired, something comes from heritage also, the love for music and dance. It comes in their genes and they can learn it very fast. They stick to that art.
There is just one final message from Ms. Divya Rupa, who's watching on YouTube. Again, she thanks you for giving us an extraordinary insight about history that is forgotten. And I think that's a very good point, which is that, because of, the changes in history, the ups and downs, this has been forgotten. So thank you. These are all the messages and questions that we have.
You have taken even from the YouTube and the Zoom link also?
Yes,
Everything has been done with?
Yes.
So now I open the session for 1 or 2 questions before we wind up. Personally, you can switch on your camera and your audio, and then I think Mrs. Rekha Rao will take 1 or 2 questions.
Yeah. Sure. I can.
I'll ask a question. Is there some sort of a symbol that characterizes the Devadasis? Because there is something called Mutta or Sutta that they give off and then they get married. Is there some symbol, something like that?
No, Devadasis were not allowed to marry because they were already married to the deity. They undergo the marriage ceremony with the deity. So if they are not sincere, they can always get out of temple premises if they are not interested in serving in a temple, if they are attracted by family. But Devadasis had the privilege of, they were not, they enjoyed sexual life also with the donors or kings or influential persons. They had children also. One of the figures in Belur temple has a young girl in shorts. She is with a main patra. She represents Anuvalata Sule. That means a young girl who was their children, Devadasis' children were Anuvalata Sule. So these sculptures, a study of sculptures give out these points.
Another question is, we see the Apsaras depicted in Cambodia. But they also don't look like Apsaras, like how you describe them, that they are flying with Gandharvas. They look like proper dancers, more like Devadasis. So what went into the sculpting of these figures as Apsaras in the Cambodian temples?
Cambodia, the Indian, in 7th, 8th centuries, most of the temple, Cambodia and other places were, the artists from India went over there and they popularized Indian art there. So Cambodia, it was a mixture of Indian theme with the regional art. That's how Cambodian dancers are different. They look different from. And even in Indonesian temples, Borobudur, we see Apsaras serving food. That is because Shringara is Ramya Deshe Kalakala Vesha Bhogadi Sevanai. All this topic will come under a dancer or Apsara representation, any one topic. Ramya Desha is a pleasant place, like Apsara is in she may be a dancer, may be depicted, she is in a garden, but she is depicting Shringara Rasa. Ramya Kala, she may be into any instrument or singing or oneness with music. Kala, her private time, when she is talking to a parrot, she is in Ramya Kala. That is also a Devadasi figure depicting how Ramya Kala of Shringara Rasa is depicted. She is not talking to a parrot or a pigeon, letter sequence from receiving from pigeon, but it is a part of Shringara Rasa. That is one sentiment of Navarasa of dance. So Ramya Bhoga Seva, that Bhoga means enjoying food. Enjoying food is also a form of that swells your mind, keeps your mood happy. These are under Shringara Rasa and these are depicted by Devadasis. So Cambodia might have absorbed this basic fundamentals and depicted, mixing it with their regional art. Not necessarily they follow 100% of Indian art, but they took the philosophy, the ideas, and merged it with their style of dancing. That's how we find Cambodian art and Indonesian art, Malaysian art. They have plenty of apsaras, but they are slightly different from, the concept is same, philosophy is same, but depicted differently because it merged with regional art, regional sculptors. They had their own way of costumes.
But they did not have this concept, something akin to Devadasis in our system?
That part needs to be explored, whether Cambodia had Devadasis in temple, because I have seen even in Indonesian temples, so many Devadasis, so many dancers are there. Whether they were Devadasis or just dancers, I will explore and come back to you.
Because we have a shared heritage. When there is a shared heritage, some aspects of this also, there would have been an incorporation, probably.
But temples definitely had dancers. Whether they were they were temple dancers, temple servers, definitely. But how they were used, what was their status, uh, that part I need to explore. Study Cambodian history or in detail for that.
So you have not been to Cambodia?
I have, no, I have seen Indonesia, Bali, Prambanan,
Okay, okay.
and we wanted to go, but there was some political unrest, something we could not enter. We had to cancel and we hardly had any time. So sometimes we land up seeing pictures and understanding. Even for these Devadasi figures, the pictures are so high in the temple, you cannot notice what exactly many figures are worn out. You need to buy good pictures from AIS, Gurgaon, like they supply good pictures, done by professional artists. That we have to buy and enlarge and study. Otherwise, just when we go to a temple and the figures are so high, we cannot study much. And it is so hot, rock will be hot. We feel like running away from the place. But photographs, pictures help a lot. Good pictures.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. One excellent lecture, and I loved the whole thing. It just went off like a few minutes, so 1 hour. One basic doubt I have: this work it out. This figures, what you say, are all seen by the architect, and then they engrave the statue, or it is the imaginary thing. How it came first, whether the it was sculpted first, or it was like models, they pose and then they sculpt with that and then do it, or how do they do it? Any idea of that?
Yeah, it was not just only imagination. They referred to scripture. They referred to, Manasallasa, it is written by a Chalukyan king, Someshwara III. He has given an encyclopedia of the social life. He describes in detail how the queen's social life is projected. How did they spend their time? And so that part describes what was the costume, what was the dress, how did Devadasis or Vilasinis, they call it Vilasinis, entertain the king, what was the status of queen, how did Vilasinis try to attract the king. All these are documented in Manasolas. Manasolasa also follows Natshastra to a very great extent. On that, it is merged with the Chalukya and Hoysala lifestyles of the royal families and commoners also. Even the food is discussed in that. So the sculptors knew about that. How the queens, it's many say it is Queen Shantala. It's not, it may not be exactly Shantala, but Shantala was a patra. That's also, it's not just imaginary. It was a combined effort of reading scriptures, understanding our heritage knowledge, and then artistic skills, whatever the sculptors had, the Sapatis had, was supported by Devadasi figures. It was not totally imagination. It was based firmly on scriptures, on our Shastras.
Thank you very much, madam. I have traveled India-wide and also worldwide. 42 countries I have seen. Plus, India, most of the temples I have visited. My look was totally different. Now, based on your lectures, etc., my way of looking at it will be totally different. Thank you very much. I was very appealed with this. Thank you.
So thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much for the Destination Heritage. She has been conducting, they have been conducting good lectures like this, which is eye-opener for most of the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your support, because we have good support. We also put that extra effort, go that extra mile to bring in excellent speakers with out of the box subject matters.
Yes.
Shreyas, there is one comment by Sushila BS. Can you please read it out?
Yes, yes. So Dr. Sushila says, sincerely thank Destination Heritage in arranging such wonderful talks from time to time with excellent resource persons. Mr. VVVS Mufti also says thanks to Rekha ji and Dr. Geeta for giving such a good presentation today.
So thank you so much, Rekha ji, for your wonderful exposition on this not very well understood aspect of Devadasis, who had a different connotation from the ancient times to now, because now we have a different idea about these people who are not respected, and we give them a different meaning, not understanding that there is a hoary history. And maybe when we understand the past and its history, we will be a little bit more, what to say, enabling and more inclusive. I think we will be more inclusive because of their contribution in times of Oyor, especially in temples they have done a yeoman service. Thank you so much, Rekha ji. Once again, a wonderful subject, a wonderful way of putting it across that everybody was able to relate. And thank you so much. So
Thank you,
good night.
Geeta ji, for giving
night.
me
Geeta
the
ma'am, 1
opportunity.
minute.
Thank you, Shreyas ji. And
Thank
thanks to
you,
all
ma'am.
scholars present here.
Thank
Good
you,
night
ma'am.
and Shubharatri.
Thank you.
Geeta ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes, we will call it a day. We have overshot.
No, I
will-
just need one second. Somebody was continuing in my answer and I saw some sculpture about it. I wanted to see that sculpture.
Which one?
Somebody was like talking to in when I was answering and he continued it. I don't remember the scholar's name, but he had a sculpture on the top of him. So I was thinking it was a Gajalakshmi sculpture, so I wanted to see it.
No. Gajalakshmis have nothing to do with Devadasis.
No, not a Devadasi. Somebody was answering me, and on his head it was a sculpture on his head.
Okay.
See that if he can share me that picture.
But
I
who
don't
was the
remember the
gentleman?
scholar's name.
Who was that gentleman? Then it's very difficult.
He was wearing like
No.
I'm not
Alkesh
remembering
ji,
the name because I was like away from the
yeah, this is
system.
a quiz question which the quiz master has failed. So,
There was a gentleman who said in my book I have mentioned something about Devadasi, and further was the continuation of that lecture.
Shreyas, can you recollect whose name is that?
Ganesh.
I
Mr.
think it's a
Ganesh.
Ganesh maybe.
I will give you his number and you can take it forward. So we'll call it a day and Shubharatri.
Yeah, sure, Giram. Just let him know that he Alkesh saw the sculpture and he thought he's
No,
Sir, there it is.
in my
Sir,
heart
it's there.
it shows
It's
that he's
there.
a
Sir,
There.
it's there.
yeah. Ganesh ji,
Okay.
can I see the whole sculpture?
Alkesh ji,
Once
he will
more.
give a picture of this, not on my platform. We will continue later. So, Shubharatri and good night.
Shubharatri.
All right.
Good
Thank you,
night.
Geeta ma'am. Thank you, Geeta ma'am. Thank you so much.